Let's talk about string interpolation and template literals. If you've spent any time now concatenating together strings and variables to make a longer string, you probably have said to yourself there has to be a better way. I'm here to tell you there is. It's called a template literal. Up until now, you've used concatenation. Let's start there so that we can compare the two. Here we have a couple of variables, captain and ship. We would like to form a sentence. Captain blank has a ship called blank. To do that with concatenation, you are familiar with this. We would say, and I'm going to store it in a variable, so I'm going to call it old message. And I'll start with captain, but I have to put a space in there, plus the variable captain. And then space has a ship called space plus ship plus period. Okay, so we had to take all of those strings and concatenate them together to make that whole sentence. Now let's print it just to confirm that it comes out the way we expect it to. We see Captain Malcolm Reynolds has a ship called Serenity. Okay, good. So it's formatted exactly the way it's supposed to be, but it's a little clunky, right? Let's use a template literal. The first thing you need to understand about these is that you can't use quotes, not single quotes or double quotes. You use backticks. This is a key that is up just underneath your escape key at the top left part of your keyboard. So let's start a new variable, new message, and I will use backticks and start typing my sentence. In fact, rather than typing it, let's just copy and paste it from the comment up here, because it perfectly illustrates how this works. You have a natural looking sentence, and where these blanks are, we're going to use some special syntax that will allow us to evaluate JavaScript right there in place. So the way this works is you use a $sign and curly braces. Once you've opened those up, you can put JavaScript inside. In this case, I just need to evaluate a single variable captain. I'll do the same thing here. I'll replace this blank with a placeholder that holds ship. And we can see that this reads naturally, right? It's a whole sentence, no quotes, just the backticks and the placeholders. Let's log it. And we'll run it. And we see an identical sentence. So take a look at those two. Of the two of them, this is clearly much more readable. So you're going to want to get accustomed to doing it this way because this is how most professionals do it with JavaScript. It not only makes it more readable for you and prevents you from making mistakes, it makes it more readable for others as well when they are working with your code. So in that first example, we worked with variables. Let's talk about expressions. In addition to evaluating a single variable inside those placeholders, you can have full expressions. So let's do some math. We're going to create a template literal that states the amount of fuel that's left after the next trip. And I'm just going to write a sentence that sounds natural. Let's create a variable here, open backticks. After the next trip to Whitefall, the fuel level will be, and here I can open up my placeholder and say fuel level minus fuel needed. And then I'm going to put a percentage sign right after that and a period. And then there's my closing backtick, and that's it. Let's log this and we'll run it. After the next trip to Whitefall, the fuel level will be 10%. Okay, so we have established that this is a very easy format to use. You just have to remember the backticks and the syntax of the placeholder. The last thing I want to show you is how you can use this for multi-line formatting. This is actually fabulous because instead of having to put out an entire report of multiple lines with multiple console.log statements or using a bunch of escape characters to force things to the next line, you can just use a template literal. So let's create a multi-line mission brief that lists the values from the variables above, and then we'll print it. I'm going to store it in a variable. I'll open my backticks, and I'm actually going to push this to the next line, and you'll see how this comes out afterwards, why this is an interesting choice. You don't have to do it this way, but it can make a difference in how it comes out in the console. So I'm going to just type a quick line that's like a header. And then I'll go to the next line and say captain and use a placeholder to put in the name of the captain. On the next line, I'll say ship, use another placeholder for the name of the ship. On the next line, I'll say fuel and add the percentage outside so that that's just regular text. And then on the last line, I will say status is ready for takeoff. Okay, let's print it. And run it. And we see our whole report over 5 different lines, but you also notice that there's an extra line above and below, and that's because of the way that I chose to keep the backtick here and then push the content to the next line. Everything is literal, so wherever you start your backtick, from there on, it's actually paying attention to exactly what you type. And I did the same thing at the end, and notice that there's an additional line here above my next prompt. So it can be really useful for formatting in a variety of ways. I encourage you to experiment with this and see what kinds of things that you can produce in the console just by using a template literal with these placeholders. All right, I'm going to quickly make a git commit. I will add a message that says completed template literal demo. And we're done. Okay, so there's a practice here where you can print some strings, practice using placeholders for single variables, for calculating, and then do a report that looks like this. And that will give you some good practice in how to set up these template literals. And before you know it, you'll be doing it without even thinking about it. All right, that's all I've got for you. I'll see you next time.